Hello and welcome back to the Pinnacle Esports channel. Today we're here with the Pinnacle Stack, myself, Walker, B-Dog, and we've got a little bit of technical issues you might see as we go through, a little bit delay. Walker's currently over in New Zealand. Brandon has bad internet. So yeah, we'll see how this goes. But Hawker, how's it going over there and how was Sydney?
Yeah, it's good fun. I'm loving like just actually chilling in Australia and New Zealand for a bit and like seeing places. Like yeah, it's been great. Sydney was awesome as well. I think it being CS2 was a lot of fun. And yeah, the crowd was also just incredible. They were having a lot of fun too. So yeah, happy all round. I'm actually pretty okay with where CS2, like I know a lot of people aren't happy, but just I can see the promise, I can see the potential with the changes. So yeah, I'm a happy man right now.
It's nice to see the attitude changing week on week around the game as well. I remember when we had NATO on and it was just like we were pounding into this, like it had no chance. And now we've turned our heads a little bit. Now we've seen some competition. Has it been the same for you, Brandon?
Yeah, look, I'm actually the more I watch professional games on CS2, and the more I start to pick it up, I'm falling more and more in love with the game, and I do see the promise. I feel like look, it's going to take another few updates before we're fully there, but when you compare, I know it was a decade ago, but you compare the release of CS:GO compared to CS2, it has been a lot smoother. And unless I'm just drowning it all out, the noise on Twitter has died down a lot for CS2, and now the focus is back on the tournaments. We're making use of what we've got, and I'm gonna derail the podcast immediately because I wanted to ask you a question, Hawker, just about the Australian crowd, because it feels like every event, it doesn't matter where it is, everyone online is like, oh my god, these guys should have a major. They're like the loudest crowd ever. This is fantastic. How was the atmosphere over there? Because it did look really good.
Yeah, it was really good. I think it's probably partly because they don't get many events there like that often, so when they do, they make the most of it. I feel like the major thing is still just tough because of the time zone. I actually think that makes it really tough because I know people have said, oh, there's been Dota tournaments or internationals in China before and stuff like that. But like Dota's really big in China, whereas CS is not big in Asia really to the same extent. So I don't think it really makes as much sense. I quite like where it is right now. I feel like occasionally, once a year, have an event in Australia. I think they'll get really hyped for it, and I think that's probably how it's going to be. I understand why they want a major, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it works. Just time zones, man. It's tough out here.
Even Brazil was kind of tough with the time zone, at least being over in the UK and working around the event on that time zone. I had to alter mine as well. So, I mean, you were in Brazil as well, Walker, so you got to experience another loud crowd. So you're kind of on a roll with those at the minute.
Yeah,
But
that's true. And also, like Brazil was definitely next level compared to like Australia. Like Brazil, even at the group stage, like the first stage of the major, they were out here making some of the most noise I've ever heard. So yeah.
from my knowledge, it's like Dota's the one thing they're not really that fussed about over there. But every other game, they go loud for and crazy. So Asia needs that game, I think, to kind of give itself, that name and for them to be able to host those big tournaments there. But at the minute, yeah, I'm not sure if the time zone really helps because we were talking before this about viewership and it. Hawker, I mean, you're the one who was there. You were able to catch most of it more than myself and Brandon. So I was away on holiday. What was the viewership like for the event?
I think it was like pretty good. I think it was like better than the previous Sydneys, but that's like I'm always thinking of it in context of it being in Sydney. Like if this was a tournament in Europe, I think it would have had pretty decently higher numbers still. So yeah, good for what it is. I think.
And the one thing that I'm sure Brandon and I are both a bit jealous about, you got to play in the show match. How was that?
Yeah, it was fun. So there's a few things I feel like I have to say. Firstly, I didn't have my peripherals. Okay, so that's already one excuse
The
out the window.
excuses.
Here we go. Secondly, I was told, oh, everyone's just going to be having fun, messing about. So I was out here buying P90s, stuff like that, just like rushing. And then I watched the game back. Everyone's just full rifling the whole damn time. Everyone's taking it super serious. And yeah, so there's some of the excuses. I did clutch the pistol though, which was a lot of fun. I think I got 2 kills on that pistol, and then it all went downhill from there. So you know, we take those. But no, yeah, it was a lot of fun. And low key, I think it's always kind of good if Team Australia wins. Like obviously, I'd have loved to have won, but I think the crowd would would not have been too happy going into the final. So you know, that's what we'll claim. We'll claim we lost on purpose to bring the good vibes.
So UK will get their chance when the Blast tournament comes to us next summer. So that's when we get our chance to take a dub. So maybe if we get to see you in that as well, you can clutch yet another pistol round. And what will your clutch percentage be then? Are you going to be quite high up there on HLTV?
5%.
I don't know. I don't know if the stats like actually get recorded for the show match, which
Oh really?
Loki
No,
is
they
probably
don't.
a good thing
They
because I
don't.
think I ended like 4 and 15. So you know,
I guess you've got your
it's,
profile on there,
saving me.
right, already because of the casting.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Have you got one as well, Brandon?
You didn't have to. You didn't have to ask me.
Because I know you got a Wikipedia page, right?
Yeah, no, I don't have a HLTV one yet, but one day, Mr. Archie,
I
one
thought you
day.
might have got one from
No.
playing in Kettering.
Oh yeah, maybe. No, I've got Wikipedia as a player and as a caster though, so that's pretty cool.
Nice. All right, so that's the goal. When we come back to these podcasts, like from next year, once I assume you're going to be going to another Epic Land at some point, Brandon. That's where we're going to do it. We're going to make it. The three of us will get our player profiles
Pinnacle
when we win.
Stack Esports
When we
Epic
win,
Land
yeah.
team.
When we win Epic Land, that's the goal. But yeah, Sydney had a lot of surprises as well. I think Complexity making the final, probably the biggest one. So Hawk, if you could tell us a bit about Alige whilst like in his performance there, because his playoff performance was incredible.
Yeah, I think honestly, as on the whole, Complexity were really good here, which I'm really happy about because I think they were probably one of the teams that most adapted to CS2. A lot of squads were playing very similar to CS:GO, maybe just going faster paced, but Complexity were actually coming through with a lot of cool stuff. They were breaking the smokes. We still don't have a proper term for that. Breaking the smokes. I can't remember the one that I liked. Wiping. I like wiping the smokes. They were doing that a lot on both sides, which I think was cool. It was also surprising because JT said they barely had any time to prepare. I think they only had like 3 or 4 days of CS2 practice. So he was trying to like low-key say that they weren't going to do that well and that they didn't think they had anything that fresh and innovative. But I think they just quite simply used the new mechanics to their advantage in a lot of scenarios. Also helped that JT randomly decided to have a very good tournament and some maps where he was just hard carrying, which I don't know if you could expect consistently. But yeah, Alige was great. I think the whole team was solid, and in the final especially, I was really impressed when they started on the third map, falling really far behind FaZe, and it was one of those scenarios where I think the majority of underdog teams would have just crumbled. Because even the way they were losing some of the rounds looked so depressing to come back from. Their mood just looked so sad at that point. But the fact they came back and brought it to the overtimes was really impressive. So the mental clearly also there for this team, which is very impressive considering they haven't had that much experience. And I mean, who knows? Maybe Alige is actually helping out with that. I know that a lot of people have, talked about Alige and his mentality in the past, but it seems like for whatever reason, him joining this Complexity team, it's probably a bit of helping both ways because I feel like Complexity have always had this like really friendly, fun vibe, which I'm sure Alige is enjoying. And then I'm sure Alige apparently is bringing some help with like quicker communication and just stuff from maybe tier 1 teams that Complexity maybe aren't used to. So yeah, it looks like the blend is working really well for them.
You can imagine his stage experience as well as something that would have been a massive factor in that final. And maybe if the rest of the team had a bit more, they could have taken it over the line. As it was an extremely close final map that went to OT. And I think it was Rain's Tech 9 that I saw when I was watching that last map. Managed to take out one of them on the eco round and kind of turned the whole thing. So it could have gone either way. And Brandon, isn't it a little bit funny that FaZe now had something to play for, and well, look at them. They managed to win the event.
Yeah. Look, they had a point to prove. I feel like they kind of ran out of motivation towards the end of Go, because once you're in the Grand Slam and you know that the next game is on the horizon, you kind of lose focus a little bit, and also you can probably be feeling a little burnt out, and like the metaphorical like monkey is off the shoulder when it comes to like actually hitting that Grand Slam. So you're waiting patiently for CS2. They won. I feel like as well, FaZe will play well when there's no real expectations, and they won that tournament in such a classic FaZe way as well. Going down, lower bracket run, everyone have written them off, and then they come out for playoffs and they look really good to the point where they win the whole event. They've got a very experienced IGL who you know is going to guide and be able to kind of come in clutch with different variations of strategy. You've got a very good team behind them, and now look at them. They're potentially disbanding. So maybe winning CS2 tournaments isn't really the best look for everyone.
It's definitely interesting as well about the Grand Slam, because I think it's something that's not really been mentioned as much, and it's probably because we've currently got 5 different winners participating in it so far.
Yeah.
So I think usually it gets hyped up a lot when someone's getting close or someone's got like a two event lead. But that's not the case now. We've got 5 different teams in the running for it. I think Vitality might be the team to drop out last, have the fewest chances remaining, because they won the earliest event after FaZe won their Grand Slam. So yeah, it's really interesting as well in that respect, because you've got all these new teams, not new teams necessarily, but the new game that these teams can be the new top dogs of. They have this chance. Complexity definitely showing that they have that ability to do so. So yeah, we're going to see, I think, a lot of people competing in this Grand Slam, and it'd be interesting as well if we get a 6th participant in there before someone gets a 2nd win, especially with all the changes.
Yeah, I think it's also with FaZe here. It does feel like they've got actually weirdly a lot going for them into CS2, because a lot of people weren't expecting that. A lot of people were expecting the younger, fresher teams to get more of a boost, right? Because they'd be grinding more. But I actually think Rain was one of the players who looked like he adapted most well. Him on Yard on Nuke was still just as good as ever. Even with all the smokes getting wiped and stuff, he was finding all these great angles. I think it's because if you know the angles really well, you can actually just spam those smokes a little more effectively now. So Rain was doing that a lot. And then you also had Brokey, whose AWPing style seems to work really well in CS2. It does seem like those high activity, sort of medium range AWPers, close range AWPers are most impactful, at least at the start of CS2. We saw that with Monacy a hell of a lot. He was ridiculous. But Brokey, also kind of similar, where he can go for those close range fights. So I think that was a big benefit as well, because a lot of other teams' AWPers were putting up pretty average numbers and not having massive impact. So yeah, definitely a shout out to Brokey as well. Doing great.
I think Monazy is one of those players that everyone kind of expected to do well in CS2 after seeing the amount of exploits that he'd managed to get in CSGO and bug fixes and everything. And Brandon, are there any other players that you would kind of expect to perform well in CS2 that maybe have or haven't done as well as you maybe thought?
I guess from tier 2 space, you'd expect the really obvious ones are Xantares, Donk, of course. I've got to bring him up every podcast. I think I'll tell you a team that surprised me and hasn't really kicked on into CS2. A couple of them actually from tier 2 space. Bad News Eagles have been kind of struggling to the adjustment. I thought their play style would be really suited for the meta, the way that it's in. The fact that they like these really aggressive explosive executes, you blend in a couple of nades into their T-side default, and you've got a really potent mix there, especially with Devil Walk being that coach. I would have thought that would have been implemented a little bit earlier than it currently is. I thought Apex would kick on a lot more with Kixan and Sassanito, especially. I feel like Sassanito is a very good rifler when it comes to his mechanics. I just feel like when you take a look at CS2 and you think about how the game is and how responsive it feels, maybe it's different on LAN and online, but like it still feels very crisp online. And so you imagine these players that have got very good mechanical ability would do well. I think 0 Nation are a team that has been comprised of very mechanically gifted players. They have fallen off a cliff in CS2. Like, they are really struggling to adjust. And obviously, I feel like a big part of that is because Searson and just Orpin in general is kind of, it's weird because whenever you watch a pro game, you kind of have a narrative, or we had one in CCT where it was like the Orpin's actually kind of more difficult now. And then you get these really explosive younger talents that are just incredible with the AWP, and they are pulling off ridiculously audacious things that you think, oh, okay, well, maybe it's just placebo. Maybe the AWP's not actually harder. And you watch other games, and some of the AWPs are struggling, and it's going to be like that for like the next couple of months. And I feel like I've gone a little bit of a tangent to your point, really. But the obvious ones to answer your question: who is mechanically gifted, who should be doing well? For me, in a tier 2 space, it's Antares, Donk, Art Frost. You can throw in that conversation as well. Sassanito, I thought would kick on a lot more than he has, and Tabson as well. I think that's kind of a rogue shout, but Tabson's got very good mechanical ability, and he's been performing well in CS2.
I feel like we need a bingo card, don't we, for Donk and Brandon on the Pinnacle Stack.
How long before he gets mentioned? Yeah, I actually, the other thing is, some of the players that have been doing better than we might have thought, I feel like, are these super veteran players. Probably because if you've stuck around this long, you have to know how to adapt really well. So even like someone like Crims was actually really good for Fnatic. I thought he was maybe their best player at Sydney. So I think that's something we maybe didn't consider. Just the players that are really good at adapting could be good. And then also, weirdly, I was a little surprised that like someone like Nico on G2, he was pretty average, to be honest, below his normal standards. It's only one tournament. I think it's so early that it's not that important. But yeah, I'd have thought those aggressive riflers would just really kick on. But Nico not really having the star performance that I was expecting, at least at Sydney.
Ooh,
maybe we need an article coming out about like boldness relative to skill, because Alij did well, Crims did well. Ooh. Maybe Forest is going to be insane as well. He might
we need some more players to test this. We need some more players to shave their heads.
This is the theory that I've got going. Brandon's next up.
I should have done it before the show match.
Oh yeah, that
would have been incredible. Yeah, if you'd come out bald, oh my god, with the Union Jack across your head as well.
Oh my, just go full a proper UK geezer.
I think the other thing about veteran players as well, we had Neo win his first tournament as a coach, which is also exciting for him, showing that it can be done. You know, he's got what it takes, because he had big shoes to fill, and he's managed to do it already. So we'll see if he can continue that as well. Brandon, did you have something you want to say before we went on a little bald tangent?
I've forgotten what I was going to say, to be honest. Oh, no, I do remember. I think this probably isn't a hot take, and like I try to throw in some hot takes in the Pinnacle Stack, but this one isn't a hot take. I think it's a justified one. I think with CS2, another player I want to throw into the conversation that's going to do well is Bit. I feel like he will definitely kick back on, and we'll get his form back, because he's a headshot machine, man.
He was exceptional at Pro League as well. One of the main reasons Na'Vi did as well as they did. So yeah, and Na'Vi didn't get to play with their full roster at Sydney either. So it's definitely going to be, we're still yet to see how Simple plays in a pro game of CS2. So that's exciting as well to come up. Is there anything else you guys want to say about Sydney before we move on?
I guess there's a few smaller things I can talk about. Firstly, Gamer Legion picking up Snacks. Man, what a pickup that looks like is going to be. I feel like for the longest time I've been waiting for Snacks to be like an in-game leader back on a decent team. I think this was such a great risk for Gamer Legion to take. It's like, not only is Snacks such a well-known name, marketable player, but he had been playing in the Polish scene for a fair bit, even recently. And it's just been the case for so long that no one can really put together a Polish lineup for whatever reason that quite competes at the top level. So that they brought him in, and even just for the improvement in fragging, I already thought it was going to potentially give them something to work with. Seems like it's working out really nicely, and just seeing Snacks back is it's making me very happy. Like, he was making the classic Snacks plays, sneaking into positions, and those sorts of players, whenever you see someone's got that feel for the game, if they're wanting to be an in-game leader, that probably means they're going to be at least decent because they clearly have a good macro understanding. So I was pretty happy to see that. I think, yeah, it just made a lot of sense for Gamer Legion, man, because now I feel like there's something more for a casual fan to grab onto with that team. They can be like, oh, okay, nice, Snacks is there. Okay, I can get behind this a little more, which I think is nice. Outside of that, shout out to Mouse for somehow making it so far with a stand-in. Like, fair play. I think it'll be really exciting to see them with their full lineup again, because Yimpat was really damn good at Pro League. Yeah, and other than that, I think there's probably not too much more to touch on. I guess there's the general CS2 stuff. The only thing I will say that I'm not liking, I mean, firstly, the mechanics are still a bit dodgy, which the players have discussed. I think because we're not playing, it's not as bad. But secondly, something does need to get figured out with, it feels like every team is almost playing the same style of just really fast CS. And that was really fun. And it was really dynamic with the smokes getting wiped and all that. But long term, I think something that makes Counter-Strike great is the clash of styles, where you have some teams that are super aggressive, some teams like a VP that are super passive. I think there does need to be more of an ability for more different styles of play in CS2. So that's something I think that might need to get figured out going forward.
Yeah, it's something that we've discussed quite a lot in previous episodes as well. Different play styles, what play styles might be best suited for the CS2 upon release. One thing I want to ask as well, Brandon, just on the topic of Gamer Legion, was I the only one that thought FaZe was over, like their chances at Sydney once we'd seen the lower bracket that they had to face and they lost to Gamer Legion in the first round?
Yeah, definitely. I think they had a really good resurgence, and FaZe just proved everyone wrong. And again, it comes down to having no pressure, and they can just make that run. I'd like to piggyback on some of Hawker's points there, and kind of add to it, and then kind of like fight him over one of them. But firstly,
Here we
with
go.
Gamer Legion, what I will say, two things to bounce back off Snacks. And the fact that you said one thing about him sneaking into positions and just having a feel for the game. I also feel like that will lead to more mid-round calls for Gamer Legion, which I think they were sorely lacking with Nilan. Nilan is one of those, I think, IGLs that is very structured in his setup, but very set in his ways. And I feel like that could kind of maybe clash with the way that Ash coaches. Because if you look at Shuey and the way that Maus operate typically a lot, they go for a lot of mid-round calls. That's why it works well with the coach. That's why it was working well with Dexter as well, because he's a very similar style of IGL. I feel like Snacks is one of those players where if he's getting himself into more proactive positions, that's going to mesh well with the chemistry and also with his experience and having the time to now grind in the tier 2 scene. He'll actually know what works best for players, and he'll also have that generic understanding, and then he can communicate with Ash and they can build that bond. So I'm very pro Snacks. I was actually really worried about it when they first signed him, because I was like, is this a step sideways rather than forwards for Gamer Legion? It actually looks like a step forwards, so I think that's pretty cool. The second minor thing I would say about Gamer Legion is shout out Volt, because he played really well. It looks like he's kicking on a lot in CS2, so that's really exciting for his trajectory, because again, thought it was a good move for him to go to ITB to GL. Wasn't starting off in the vein he probably would have hoped for, but CS2, despite them not making groundbreaking runs and their placement, it's really good signs that we're saying this much praise about Gamer Legion, despite where they ended up in the placement ranks. The thing I wanted to kind of beef with you about isn't really beef, but you're saying about the clash of styles and how everyone was playing. I agree with you to a certain extent, but at the same time, give them a chance, man. Like, they've just had this game. It's not in its final form. People are going to take a while for meta to be defined. Like, they are going to try these explosive plays because it's new and it's shiny. Give it a few more events, and then people will adjust, and there'll be different styles of Counter-Strike for everyone to enjoy. It's like, chill out, Hawker, man.
I don't know, man. I think if the game stays as it is now, I think it would maybe even lean like just more towards that aggressive style. I feel like just with like Pika's advantage, it seems really hard to get multiple kills on sprays as well. I think that's a big thing teams are struggling with, because even with like these pistol rounds, like with just Tech 9s, the majority of those rounds are coming really close now. And even on CT side, I think the teams that were most successful, or at least some of them, like Complexity, were really active and aggressive on CT side quite a lot. So yeah, I just think the mechanics right now, it's like this perfect storm that almost makes it that you probably have to start playing a little more aggressive. But yeah, we'll see if there's any changes made. I think if like the Pika's advantage gets toned down, then that would probably make a pretty big difference, to be honest. Just that alone. So we'll see.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I hope. What was that? What was that like on LAN? Was it less? Did players say it was less noticeable compared to online, or did they not really comment on it?
I think they said like they didn't really feel much of a difference. There was actually I'm pretty sure it was an HLTV video where they were asking pros some questions, and I think the main thing is people said they didn't feel like they were dying like behind walls and round corners, but they said other than that, it feels mostly pretty similar to how it was playing online. So yeah, it seems like the Pika's advantage was still there, pretty big. I think at least that's the vibe I got from most players.
I think they just need to fix the economy as well. I think that is a big thing moving forward.
Oh, true.
That is my main gripe with the game at the moment, right? Like the fact that even if sometimes like T side, if T side don't get the bomb down on the pistol and they lose, that you're seeing 5 Glocks in the round after. It always feels like a buy one get one free, and you had that liberty. I think a lot more. In Go, where you had the extra rounds to play for, it doesn't matter so much. It really does now. I think like because if you lose the first gun round, say like it's round 3, because that's what I'm seeing a lot in casting these games on tier 2, tier 3. It's like you lose pistol, say you then lose the eco because you're full eco, then you lose your gun round. That's 3 rounds out of 12 already. That's a quarter of rounds you've lost because you've lost the pistol. You compare that to Go, it's like 20% versus 25%. So like it's rough. That really needs to be worked out, in my opinion. I think like teams will get creative in how they work around it. I want to give actually a shout out to Big for this because I'm just remembering it now as I'm talking about it. But they played yesterday in CCT in a semi-final. They lost pistol. They full eco'd. They were on CT side. So they had like 4 grand in the bank. They could have bought like full M4s, could have bought utility. Instead, every single player bought MP9 utility in round 3 after they'd saved. They all had like 1,900. So even if they lost the round, they would still invest anyway. But they were playing like they had a bonus win. It was really bizarre, but it was actually kind of cool to see that teams are thinking about the economy in the short term. How can we adjust to kind of get the most out of each round?
Yeah. Also, at Sydney, Bet Boom were occasionally actually just having players save in the pistol round, because then on T side, especially if you get the bomb down, you're buying the next round is actually mega. So I think it's been fun seeing teams adapt like that for sure.
You know, this Sydney talk has been great because every question I've gone to ask you guys, you've already just brought it up naturally in the next section. It's just we're 6 episodes in, we're finally coming together, guys.
Yeah.
I
will also say actually,
we all talked at once.
Yeah, that's the one thing.
There we go. You crushed it, Brandon.
Yeah, I will also say with the economy, if you ever have a game that's just like 4 spies getting one back and forth, like I had a game like that where I think it was maybe round 7 was the first time we got a proper gun round, or maybe even round 8, because it was just 4 spies being one back and forth. Bro, that doesn't feel like a half of Counter-Strike. If you get like a total of maybe 3 or 4 gun rounds, not even that sometimes, yeah, that's pretty tough. But hey, the 4 spies I think are more and more important now. Yeah,
that happened in the cast today, and the first full eco where everyone was on USPs was round 9, and it was like, what the fuck is going on? Don't know if I'm allowed to swear on the Pinnacle Stack. Sorry, but I have.
Well, you just did.
Sorry, we're 18 plus. It's okay. I'm sure there's been swears in the past. Yeah. Yes, that as well. Thank you, Brandon. Yeah, we'll move on from Sydney. Just talk about some of the tournaments happening at the minute. One of them that started today was Roobet, where we had I don't know if we were going to call it really a surprise victory from Heroic. They played Aurora, but they did have to field 2 players 14 minutes before the game. We'll talk about that a bit after. The other tournament that's going on starts on Friday, which Brandon will be casting, is Thunderpick. So just going to pass it over to him to talk a bit about Thunderpick and some of the teams there.
I thought we were talking about Roobet first. That's fine. We can do Thunderpick. Let me bring up my notes here, Mr. Archie.
Sorry, there's just not too much on Roobet right now.
No, true.
We've only had the day play.
Yeah.
We got VP win. Talk about that, but
lovely. James
your
still
Donk.
saving in CS2, my king. Thunderpick's interesting. You've got some really tough groups, actually, because look, Group A, Cloud9 Fnatic, NiP, VP is really competitive. Same could be said with Group C, Spirit, Complexity, Mouse, M80. M80 has drawn the short straw there, IMO. Heroic, Nouns, Furia big in Group D, with Heroic looking all over the place. Nouns looking to put some NA representative on the map. Furia beating Eternal Fire today, so that's interesting. Big being big. And then Group B, Monte, Wildcard, FaZe, Saw. That one's a bit more clean cut for me, I think. Top two make it out the group. I think it's GSL. So like winners will play winners, and then like you get the elimination games. I think top two make it through, and then it's playoffs, which is a little bit different from the Thunderpick group stages, because to qualify to the event, it was just one massive single elim bracket. It was torture for a lot of teams. But you know, some people made it through the odds. I think it was Big and Spirit that made it through Europe, as well as Mouse and Saw. Yeah, okay, I was right. Nice. And then North America, Wildcard, M80, Nouns made it through the gauntlet alongside Complexity. I think, look, it's an interesting tournament. The fact that you've got a little bit of leverage in the group stage, I think, is nice, especially with the amount of prize pool that's on offer, because I think it's like about $500,000 for the main event. It'll be interesting. I think some groups are very competitive, and we're going to get some upsets. For others, I think it's a little bit more clean cut.
We also get to see FaZe again in Thunderpick, which is going to be interesting because there's so many rumors flying about at the minute for different teams, and one of them is being FaZe. So we'll see how they play. Maybe even whether the announcement, we've seen a lot of late announcements as well, particularly the Heroic one. So we could even get a late announcement that happens before that event. I doubt that's the case. They'll probably just play this one out. They've not got too much on the calendar for the rest of the year. So there's not a lot left for them to be playing in. But yeah, it's nice as well that, I say it's nice. It's nice to have an online event now that we get to see all the teams play with all their rosters, because we didn't get to see that at Sydney. So it's going to be nice to see some of these teams come back with their full rosters. Mouse being one of them, seeing how they get to compete, especially because they're in the group with Complexity, who just did very well, and Spirit, who's got Brandon's boy on there. So yeah, it's going to be particularly interesting here. Are there any favorites for you, Brandon?
I would say if you just look at groups alone, I think obviously you got to talk about FaZe. I think VP are actually going to be a dark horse in CS2. I feel like because everyone is going for these really fast plays, as Hawk is mentioning, VP are a team that aren't going to do that. So maybe because they are so outlandishly different, they might be pretty good. I'll have to see how they perform in some of the games coming up this week to really give a pure assessment. I actually think Mouse online are not very good. So I don't actually expect too much from Mouse. I'm going to be real. I think Complexity will do well. I expect Spirit to do well. I think Big have got the potential, but
Big, yeah.
Where I've been watching them recently, they suck at closing out games. Like, I don't know what it is. They will be up like 12-3, 12-4, and then the game will end like 13-10. It would be a nail biter every single time. So if they can work that out, I think they've got actually a very strong roster for CS2. Man2 is loving CS2. That guy, I don't know what he's eaten or like what his aim routine is, but he is unreal at this game. Like, sometimes Big will end a map like 13-10. It should have been 13-4, but you look at the score and Man2's on like 28 kills like every time. It is unreal.
So do you have something to say as well, Hawker? Because I think I may have cut you off before I asked Brandon.
No, I was just going to say that I think it should be fun now, because we've had a bit of official experience for all teams. I'm hoping we get to see them all start to adjust a little more. I think even during Sydney, we kind of saw teams start to adapt. Like, I remember with the FaZe versus Gamer Legion, the opening matchup, the Nuke game played very differently to how it played when they played their rematch. That there was a lot of like adjustment and adaptation. So I think we should hopefully see teams start to really actually maximize what CS2 is going to look like. And realistically, when it's online, I think a lot of teams will just do a little bit of experimentation, especially if it's like an opening game in a group. They're going to feel like, oh, we can try some new stuff. So that's mainly what I'm hoping to see. I think this should be a fun proving ground for some of the lower ranked teams, and then maybe a fun chance to experiment for some of the higher ranked teams, some of the favorites.
I have another question for you, just off the back of what Brandon was saying earlier about our pros feeling it on LAN. Is there much of a difference? Do you think that the teams that have been playing a lot of the online tournaments are going to perform better, or sorry, may have a better chance at taking advantage of the game at the minute than the ones that just played at Sydney, because they've just come off the back of playing CS2 in a LAN environment?
Yeah, potentially. I also think just like the travel is actually a pretty big consideration. And like, I know for some of the teams, even that got knocked out early, I do think most of them went home. But I know that like, obviously Volt was still there because I played the show match with him. So some of them, I think, hung around. I don't think Gamer Legion are at either of these tournaments, though, to be fair. So
No.
don't think they're having to grind. But anyway, it's one of those where like if you've just been working at home, it is kind of different. Like you have more of an ability to just practice a lot, and when you practice a lot, that's when you can actually experiment a little more. Whereas, you know, every team at Sydney, they probably showed what they have at Sydney and shouldn't have too much of a chance to turn it around. So yeah, definitely could be the case.
Yeah, I think these events are going to be interesting as well. We got a few different teams, so Walker's having a bit of hostile trouble.
Yeah, someone's in the kitchen, someone's having struggles.
You're not allowed out of Sydney,
yeah, just
Walker. You stay in the broadcast room.
You're stuck there now. Yeah, these two tournaments I think are going to be quite interesting. I didn't realize how high the prize pool for Thunderpick was. It's kind of surprised me, but the teams, I would say that the teams at Thunderpick are probably better than the ones at Roobet, based on ranking.
I'd say so, yeah.
So
not
yeah,
biased.
there's definitely some good games. Not biased. You're just sitting there. I get to watch the better teams. So yeah, they're definitely going to be interesting. You can check out both events over on the Pinnacle Esports Hub as well. We'll be offering odds on those. So yeah, and events, there's a lot more coming up throughout the month, but we'll be covering those on future podcasts as and when we get more information on them. I think CS Go Asia Championship or CS2 Asia Championships. Need to stop calling it CSGO. Still stuck in that. As well as Fire League. So we'll be discussing that on the next episode. And what I want to talk about now is just some of the roster changes and the roster, just the rosters that are happening at the minute, because there's so much going on. A bit of drama kicked off today. We've been talking about Heroic earlier, about how they managed to get their win against Aurora. So I'm assuming both of you guys have seen the drama surrounding this. Stavin and Yabi saying that Cadian had to go, or they go, pretty much, as an ultimatum, and that they'd re-sign contracts. They didn't, and apparently they want to go to Astralis. So I just want to ask the question quite simply to you, Brandon. Is this Heroic team done?
Well, yeah, I mean, it is, mate. 3 players have left the team. Like, what? Like,
do you think they have a chance to revive it, though?
I mean, yeah, I mean, they can. There's every chance a team could revive. However, it's going to take a serious rebuild. You got Dupree, who's coming in thinking, oh, nice, I get to play some very good Danish riflers. I can kind of go back to speaking Danish for a little bit. Obviously, I've left Astralis. I've gone to Vitality. I've won a major. Now I come back to Heroic. It'll be probably some frosty reception because obviously it's Astralis and Heroic, the 2 big orgs. But that's fine because it doesn't matter. I could play with Stown. I could play with Yabi. I've got some experienced players next to me. And then they all just decide to leave. So I don't know. I think you can, of course, rebuild the Heroic roster. What's it going to take? You now need an AWPer. You now need an IGL. You now need some very big firepower. It will be fine as long as the other pieces in Heroic don't implode. But given how that is going, it doesn't really fill you with the greatest amount of confidence. So currently in this iteration, no, you can't rebuild. But what I will say is big shout out to the two Mouse NXT players who have come in on loan. They've stepped up to the plate. They've used this opportunity as a spotlight for themselves, and they played incredibly well. So you got to give a lot of credit to them. There's obviously a lot of noise around Heroic. They are young guys coming in from Mouse NXT. They were like 16, 17 years old. And the fact that they're able to cut out all the noise, they're just going to play Counter-Strike for themselves. Don't know how long they're going to be standing in for. They might even stand in for Thunderpick, so we might be seeing them for a little bit longer. They might even then get permanent contracts. You don't know how it's going to play out, but can you rebuild it? Yeah, in theory. Will it take time? Absolutely.
I think the one thing that they're quite lucky to have is that they're a Danish lineup. Of all the countries to play CS, they have players absolutely everywhere. So I think they are quite lucky in that regard. The one thing as well that I thought was really good from them was the Dupree deal up until the end of the year. I thought that was really smart. Seems even more smart now that they've kind of gone into a bit of turmoil with this roster. But I thought that was really clever to, give him this chance to the end of the year, see how that works out, and kind of run from there. Not a lot of teams do that. They seem to offer these massive contracts and kind of just go, yep, you're joining the team on a permanent basis, and well, we might have to remove you in a few months, like Liquid have done. So, yeah, I thought that was quite good to see. Cadian is the big talking point, as I've just mentioned. Liquid, that seems to be where most of the links were. Some with the Falcons, and Liquid have gone into a bit of disarray as well. It's only Naf and Yakinda left on there. Zeus has replaced Daps. Do you think that cadian can find a home in this Liquid team, Hawker?
Oh, this this could be very interesting. I know a lot of people were excited about this, but something I will say is that cadian in the past has had this big reputation for, I guess, being hard to work with is the way I'd have to say it. Like in the past, he's had a lot of problems with teams. And listen, whatever you think about the Yabby and Stown stuff, it sounds like that was another conflict basically that ended up happening. And I think maybe for the longest time, cadian might have. I think Heroic are a team where it really feels to me like those are players who are not really going to rock the boat for the most part. They were pretty chill guys, and so it probably worked pretty well on that team where, if anything, they kind of needed cadian to bring a bit of fire. But if you look at like Liquid, I mean, it really kind of massively depends on how the cadian Yakinda stuff would go down for me. Like those guys, if that happens, those guys I think they could either get along really well and have like a mutual respect, because I think they're both quite outspoken, brash guys, or they could just butt heads and it could just go terribly. So I think that's a very important fact to think about here, because for me, the fact that it sounds like Yabby and Stown put down this ultimatum, like at least from what I understand about Yabby and Stown, these are not guys who like conflict, right? Like they probably must have really, for whatever reason, felt like that's something they had to do. Now, listen, from what we've heard and from what's come out, the way they went about it, probably not great, considering they're apparently not going to re-sign. If that's true, then that's honestly pretty bad, because Heroic, I'm sure, would have loved to just stick with cadian. But yeah, I think it's the only issues I could see are maybe personality stuff. But other than that, having an actual good AWPer on Liquid, yeah, that's nice. I think OC was like pretty good, but it's a very different style of AWPer that they would have in cadian, and it seems like it might suit CS2 better. So yeah, I think it could work out pretty nicely. But there's I don't know, whenever you have moves like this, there's like a lot of questions. Liquid are kind of in a weird spot where it's kind of feeling like they don't 100% know what they're trying to do. I don't know if they have a big end goal. I'm going to let you talk, because apparently I'm burning down.
Yeah. So, yeah, with Liquid as well, it's funny that you mentioned about those the personalities, because NAF's almost on like the opposite end of that, at least from what I see from an outside perspective, of completely chill. The one clip I remember, I think, is him and Rush when they're shouting in the voice chat at each other.
Nuke.
So that's the only time I think yeah, that's the only time I feel like I've ever seen NAF like get angry with anybody. But yeah, the other players linked. Twist's apparently resigning, which is extremely exciting for the NA fans. And Skulls is the other one who would come along with Zeus. But yeah, Brandon, how do you feel about this Liquid team and what it could potentially be?
Let me take you on a walk down memory lane, Archie, where
Okay.
Americans and Brazilians, you throw in a European in there, reunite and they make a super team, and it's called Made in Brazil. That went really well. Look, you're talking about the personality clashes with Cadian just in Europe. You're now bringing in new cultures you got to adjust to. Liquid have said that it wants to go in for a European blueprint and are now giving up on that project. So now you're trying, you're taste testing all of the different regions. You've had Fallen in there for a bit, but he's been playing in Europe before. And now you think, oh, let's get a South American coach who, no disrespect, he has been at the highest level, but he's been out of the tier 1 game for a while. You're bringing in Skulls, who I think looked really good alongside Zevi on Pain. But now you're mixing so many things together, and everyone is going to have such high expectations because they're big name value, and everyone, and including probably the organization, is going to go, "Oh, we want you to win trophies." The fact that you are bringing all of these European players in, you bring in Rainwaker for a few months, and then you completely scrap that idea. How long, realistically, does this project have? Because if it's not going to get results in like the first 3 months, they're just going to get dropped again. Everyone's going to laugh about lol quid. This sucks. Like, I don't understand. Like, it really frustrates me just seeing this mentality, especially in esports teams where they go, "Oh, that didn't work. Oh well, we'll just fucking drop everyone and we'll just buy everything again." And it makes no sense, and it really gets on my nerves. Am I excited about this roster? I don't care. Are they going to be okay? I don't know. All I know is give it like 4 months and I'll make a change again.
I do think the only counter I would have here is that, so I don't know exactly how the management structure or whatever works, but it basically, from what I've been hearing recently, I feel like it was kind of Daps who was doing a lot of this big scouting for some of the players that were brought in. And I really like Daps, but he definitely strikes me as the kind of guy who would look at like someone like a Rainwaker, who I don't think is that skilled mechanically, but makes some good decisions. I can imagine Daps being like, yeah, I like this guy. I want him on my team. Like, that seems like the sort of leader that Daps would be. And so the fact that they're actually going away from him, it seems like maybe they gave Daps like the keys to try and make a good roster, and it didn't work. Because initially, I remember everyone was saying, oh, these Patsy and Rainwaker pickups, they're just trying like some new players just because they have a bit of time before the CS2 major and the big tournaments. So they're just, having these as a bit of a trial period. But the more I hear about it, the more I actually think Daps was trying to build a really good roster, and maybe it just didn't work. And so they've decided to just go a completely different direction. This is where it would be nice to have a bit more understanding of exactly who's making these decisions. Because if it is all the management who are making a lot of these transfer decisions, then they're doing a terrible job, I have to say. But if they were going more of the approach, like a Falcons with Zonic, where they've kind of said to Zonic, all right, we're giving you all you want, make a good team. If that's the sort of thing they were doing with Daps, and they were actually giving him a lot to work with, then I think it actually makes a bit more sense. But like you're saying, it's still going to be a roster that if they go for this roster now, they have to give it time. They just have to. Like, you have to give it probably at least 3 months before it gets up to speed.
No,
that's really interesting
sorry.
as well, because wasn't
No, I'm
Cirque
cutting
one
you
of
off,
his
Archie.
players?
My internet's lag. I'm cutting you off. I'm sorry.
There we go.
Go on, get the run on, get the run on.
Why is 3 months? Why is that? How, like, that's such a short amount of time. I think you give it.
Yeah, but you can.
No, I would like to see teams. I know. No, I would like to see teams give it like a season. Why don't you give it a season? You give it half a year, and you see how it works. If it's
I think after 3 months,
if it's in the
like,
ground, if it's
see.
all on fire, then fine. But if it's like, oh, we can see progress, it is kind of working. I'd be more inclined to give teams a season, and I will, before people get angry at me in the comments, I will actually say that makes a lot more sense with what you're saying about the whole DApps thing. If it was like Liquid have gone, here DApps, you do you, and they're moving away from DApps and they're trying a new direction, absolutely fine. If management are just kind of picking and choosing at whim, then it is terrible recruitment.
Yeah, that's the tough thing. I think, like, especially in sports or like football, for example, it's a lot more structured. Like, there will almost always be a guy whose job it is to make the signings, and so if that guy is making bad signings, it's a little easier to point at him. But esports teams can work in very different ways, and I think that's part of the problem. I don't think the communication from Liquid has been that great from what I've seen, which is why it feels like they're just doing random stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I'd basically love to hear from Liquid, who's been making what decisions, why was this change something you felt was needed. I guess maybe we'll see, like, once the names actually get announced, maybe we do get a bit more communication.
Do you think that how you said there about in football you got the one guy who does it? Do you think that because we play so many more tournaments in such a short period of time, that's why it's so different to something like football, where you'll play, an entire year of the same league with multiple tournaments happening around it?
It's a combination of different things. I think that's a good point. I feel like in addition, esports is still very new and has not been the amount it is blown up compared to the time span that organizations have had. It is not proportional. So as a result, you get all of these decisions happening just kind of like that because there's inexperienced people kind of running some of these organizations and also not having the necessary experience to know and cope with what is going on. So I think that plays a big part in it. I also think people in esports, just in general as well, don't really have some of the background that you kind of get when it comes to like higher profiling in some of like these big football teams. Because you think about, I think casting is actually a really good parallel with football commentators, because football commentators have been like, you see the ones on, like, in the UK you get Sky Sports, BT Sports, but basically whatever country you're in, normally when you go and watch them on TV, they've been honing their craft for maybe like 10, 15, 20 years to get that opportunity and be up there. It's similar in CS, but obviously, again, it's shrunk a lot more. And it's fantastic that obviously casters, I can speak for myself, but also just like other casters getting these opportunities in this space. But it's just a lot of people coming in, and esports is now, well, financially probably not in the best spot it has been in before, but for ease of the point and how it's been over the last few years, exponential market. So you've got more opportunities but less time to figure things out, which is why you get these rash decisions and why you get fan kind of like impatience as well. I could say a lot more on it, but I feel like that is just the general gist.
And also, just to add, like, you also still see in sports teams get it terribly wrong. Like, look at Chelsea, man. They just buy basically anyone that they can. Like, so it's, you still get the incompetence as well. But yeah, that I think there are more opportunities, right? It's just so established football where, yeah, you have to like work your way up the leagues almost, and then you also have a lot more, I would say, like, professionals, I guess, working in the organizations where you've probably had some experience. You've maybe gone to university. There's much more of like a standard, I think, way that you could work up in those fields. Whereas esports is very much like a lot of people that end up making the decisions. Seems like a lot of times it ends up being coaches actually, who probably do have the best base of knowledge for players. But yeah, it's probably more sometimes you need someone in like the management to come in and have that business nous that we maybe don't have as much of.
What I will
definitely
say,
agree with that, because
okay, sorry.
Go ahead, Brandon. No, go ahead, Brandon.
No, all I was going to say, I was actually going to compliment your team, Archie. I was going to say, I think Fret coming in and kind of being that like guidance counselor for NiP, I think it's actually a very clever thing, because it's someone who's worked in the organization, understands how it runs, understands the goals and the visions of the org, but also at the same time has that outside approach where he's been away from the active roster for quite a while. I actually think the way they're doing that is very clever, and I hope other people look at it not based just on the success, but they can go, oh yeah, actually that's a smarter way of doing things.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a long time coming that NiP should have approached something in this kind of way. it just seems that the decision making that they had, I mean, we will talk about them in a bit, but decision making that they've had has just been terrible, and they need that figure who is sitting there making those decisions and just making the hard choices. I feel like that's a lot of it as well, is making those difficult choices. The teams just don't really do it often. But just going on the back of Hawker's point as well, there's, in esports, it's still so young. Many people don't given the opportunities because of a specific esports related degree. They'll get it because of a related degree that in some way links to it. So even in my case, I have a film production degree. I got a chance in esports to give it a go. But if you put me in a GM position, I have no idea. I don't have any of the relevant qualifications. But so then, what are the relevant qualifications for that role other than experience? And unfortunately, I don't think esports is old enough yet to have the experience required for people to get that expertly right. But definitely the way that NiP are doing it, I think it's a really good idea. That someone, as Brandon you just said, work their way through that organization, knows the organization, knows the country that they're set up in. And I think Sonic is going to be a really good way of seeing, is that how teams should approach it going forward in the future. So yeah, definitely
It's
a lot of interesting points.
It's also funny because, I mean, I don't know fully the background of like some of the Astralis people, but they try to present themselves as this pretty business savvy and that they've got these business guys. And then even them, they will like sign Zipex for years. And pretty much anyone who follows Counter-Strike could tell you, dude, you can't be signing him on this massive contract for years. Like, what? Yeah, it's just mad that sometimes it genuinely feels like a random fan could maybe make better decisions than that. I think most fans would have told you, don't sign Zipex for years. Don't do that.
Need a Moneyball situation, I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely a lot of fans out there. You'll see them in the HLTV forums thinking that they can make better decisions.
That would be a great experiment, though, wouldn't it?
Well, have just a HLTV guy just take over.
Maybe like a crowdsourced HLTV team.
Mate,
that would be incredible to see.
Go on YouTube and type in "my goldfish traded my stocks." That is literally what that would be.
Like... Oh yeah. Doesn't it? The goldfish does really well though in that video. I'm pretty sure it like outperforms the market.
By luck.
I'm wondering if that's the IQ level that you're associating with HLTV forum users.
That could be one thing you take away from that. I didn't say that.
So it's all open to interpretation, isn't it? I was going to say something else about that. Anyway, we're on different topics. We'll talk about NiP though, because we just had a discussion about Frep. S-Tag's joined in place of Hampus, and news that came out today as well. They've been doing these videos as and when they make changes. They've said that S-Tag isn't the final IGL for this team. He's going to stand in place for them until the IGL is ready. They phrased it in a weird way of like, do they have someone lined up or are they still looking?
No.
I think it's a really weird decision anyway. S-Tag did put out when he first said he was looking for teams that he was happy to IGL. When they replaced him, I was like, how have you employed Fret to do this, talk about leadership, talk about role clashes, and you've still got pretty much like 2 entry fraggers in the form of Config and Brolin. I think S-Tag's great. I preached this when Config got picked up. We had episodes on fantasy, I think it was, or whatever it was we were doing back then. Brandon was involved. And I said I thought that S-Tag probably should have been the player there instead of Config if it was a bit of a weird decision. I don't know who's going to get dropped is the other thing with this team. I assume it's Brolin or Config first IGL to deal with the role clashes. But I think S-Tag coming back in sorts out the support issue. And as long as he plays that role, let's hope he's not walking again. But yeah, I think that's going to be a good choice. What other IGLs do you think could fit into this team? Because I've seen a lot of teams almost disband. I know Cadian is one that's always going to be linked, but I don't think that's going to happen with Hedrick. So what IGLs do you guys think could make this team work?
Yeah, that's tough. Yeah, I actually think Hedrick could rifle in theory. I think his rifle's really good. But I don't know if they will go for Cadian. I haven't heard those rumors. So yeah, that's the tough thing. I think picking out an IGL is always hard. I don't have like any obvious names that instantly spring to mind, and that's
they've used a lot of
that's
them up
maybe
as
part
well.
of the problem.
I think
Sorry, what?
NIP's problem is that they've used a lot of their players up in these roles. Like, they would have loved to have Nork still, I imagine, if they hadn't already tarnished their relationship there. LXEB should have been given more time. It's all situations like that, it seems, with NIP because of the bad decisions they've made up until this point. So it's really questionable. Who do you look for? Especially because every other team might be looking for an IGL at this point. Especially, Falcons are in the market as well now. But Brandon, do you have any ideas for this?
No, I'm just looking down the list of teams. Just the thing is, I think for NIP is it will take a miracle to fix that team because it's just so broken and it's terrible. I think Cadian would actually be a very good choice. If I'm not mistaken, I don't think Hedrick was actually ever an AWPer. I think he was rifling on Navi Junior.
Yeah.
And he's just kind of come into that role. I think, if I'm being brutally honest with you, outside of tier 1, I don't think there really is anyone that can come in. I think
You
you're
might have to
honestly
go all out for
looking.
Cadian, yeah.
Well, you might have to go
I
out
don't
for
know, man.
Cadian. If the FaZe rumors are true and they're getting rid, bring Carrigan maybe. That could be your obvious one. Other than that, you're looking at tier 2. You're looking at Bird from Sky, but he built that 0-0 Nation team, so I don't think he'd want to go to NiP, and I don't blame him. I don't know,
Dude,
man.
Bird from Sky maybe would take all the flack away from Hooksy. That might be the one upside. 'Cause I think he might compete with Hooksy fragging wise at tier 1.
Oh my god! Imagine if they got Hooksy. If the Falcons rumors are true about Nico and Bonazy. Oh
yeah.
I think that's the main thing at the minute. There's so much theory crafting about these rosters because it's all what if these 2 players did leave for this team? Then these 3 players are available. Do they have 2 people coming in, or does the roster disband? So I think that's the problem that we've got as well.
Yeah, we need a couple of dominoes to actually be confirmed, and then I think we'll have a better idea of what's going on.
Yeah, definitely.
Because even so, I mean, by the way, we haven't actually touched on, because we touched on the heroic side of the Yabby and Stown stuff. Dude, if they do go to Astralis, I mean, let's be real, we know 2 players that are staying, Device and Blame F.
They've just signed.
Then you have Yabby, Stown, and then probably, I mean, either Stare or Buzz maybe stays as the last.
It'll be
I guess
Buzz.
role-wise, that could be a bit awkward.
Yeah. It'll be Buzz.
Yeah, and I think that could... I'm just thinking role-wise, I think it could work still. I think Buzz could play some of the bad spots, but that's a pretty hype roster, to be fair.
Do we know contract lengths on any of these players? Because
no, we don't know anything in Esports, Archie. We don't know anything.
Well, didn't Heroic say that Yabby and Stown have 10 months
10
left?
months.
Yeah. For those guys.
Yeah.
But do we know about for Borups?
No, we won't. We wouldn't know, genuinely. Although
I mean, it's Astralis, so it'll probably be 6 years or something,
Because from
they are literally Chelsea, mate.
Well, I don't think they're going to have any problem benching them either.
2029.
They'll bring him back.
Yeah, he could go to an IP.
Oh my god, that's just not. I'm already upset. Hampus is gone. But I don't. Maybe I'm just getting confused because there was so much talk about Stir before he joined the roster. But I thought that he got signed on a fairly long-term deal. But I think I might just be getting confused because the speculation was he won't join until 2024. Originally was the talk. Might be wrong even in that. I swear I remember that.
The thing is, when initially making these signings of Borup, Stare, and Buzz, on paper, I do think Stare is the one that, before this lineup was put together, you'd have thought he's the player you signed to a longer deal because he's pretty young and it looked like he had quite a bit of potential. So that maybe could be true. But honestly, I don't even know if the 5th matters. Just that core 4 already sounds like it could be really, really spicy.
I've got a spicy IGL for you that could go into NiP.
Okay.
Sumda Young. I actually think that's a good pickup. Right?
I really like Sumda Young. I did an interview with him last year for the was it last year? No, it was this year. It was Paris. And yeah, he seems he's the thing with him is he's got that general Ukrainian reservedness about him. And I don't know with the rest of the Swedish team. This was the other problem that NiP I think seemed to have is that it's almost like what Navi said when it was like, if JL weren't here, the bootcamp would be dead and the vibe would be dead. I worry about that being the same thing. Brolin's quite reserved. Not sure about Rez. Config's loud. I don't know about Headtrick either, but yeah, I don't know. But definitely a good candidate for sure.
Yeah, so with Monty, because we'll be saying for IGL, because like
Yeah.
I think Monty, like, is it Waro calling? Like,
Yeah,
It
he
is Waro
Sunday
now,
called
but
the major, right?
Yeah.
Someday I did call the major, and they did
Yeah,
look
yeah.
good. In fact,
I
that's
mean,
the
low
furthest
key,
that
yeah,
Monty have ever really got.
yeah, like exactly. Low key, I always thought SDY is a better in-game leader than Waro. I don't know why that change happened, but hey, there we go.
What about Thomas?
Oh no, oh no. I think he himself would tell you no.
Just wanted to try and get some UK representation on the team. Yeah, off the top of my head, I really wouldn't even know where to start with like what IGL's. Fret's gonna have a good idea, I imagine. So put my trust in him, and
Yeah, it's
we will
just
see how it
hard
goes.
to get anyone that's good if you're NIP. Unfortunately, just where the team is at now. If I'm Cadian, I'm like NIP's last on my list probably compared to some of the names that have been coming out of.
I guess the one thing we can take away from it is that Fret has identified the problems in the team, the role clashes. So the fact that they've already added S tag into the team, and like as a temporary IGL, but they've added him in the team, so they want him there, right? They want him there as the final
that's
team.
good.
So they know what they want, and that means now that they can wait. These are tournaments they're in, don't matter too much for them. They can play them. They can, get the prize from wherever they place. But later on down the line, they can wait for these IGLs to come available. This Dominoes to Forge you were saying, and maybe that's when the IGL options open up for them.
Wait.
You know what? Actually, just an IGL option. I'm going to throw out there and see your response. Glaive. Any Glaive believers?
We've all forgotten about Glaive.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's an IGL. I think what's interesting. I'll come back to that in a sec because otherwise I'm going to forget my point. I'm sorry, I'm rude.
Okay.
What was I going to say? Am I getting it wrong on the rumors then for NIP? Because I thought it was Tag is temporary. He's not permanent in the team. He's permanent in the team.
So from what I gathered he's permanent in the team, but he's playing IGL temporarily.
Oh right, okay. So it's just the roles that are temporary. So there's going to be another cut then. Okay, well it's got to be. You're right then. It's got to be between Brolin and Config.
Yeah.
So I'm just looking for the article now to get exactly what he said for you.
You could get Glaive in there. I think the issue you've got is we saw how well Glaive did calling in Astralis when he didn't have a powerful AWPer. And if you've got Headtrick remaining on that AWP, who's not an AWPer by nature, but he's going to stick it out in his craft, I don't think you're going to get much usefulness out of Glaive. Also, realistically, how much is Glaive going to want to come back and play a new game after he's achieved everything he's ever wanted to in Go? I don't think the hunger, I don't think the motivation is going to be there, from being completely honest.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. Just to the point that I've got here on this HLTV article that just summarizes the video that they put out. It says that we're looking to set up a clear leader for the team. Patrick is doing a fantastic job being a temporary IGL right now, but we have a long-term solution set in the pipeline. So it seems like they've got it set up and it's ready. I'm just trying to think of other options, but as I say, like they've burnt through most of them. I don't know if Letcro's still looking for a team. I think he was on a team. I don't know if you'd even go back there. I don't know how much he's even been playing CS2. But like I'm just trying to think of Swedish options as well. Like I have no idea. No idea.
Yeah, I don't know if there are any, to be fair.
So it's a tough one, but it seems like he's got, as we said, he's got the idea in his mind of what they want. They've got S tag there. I assume to play that support role, and then one of
that was. I think that was said in the article as well. Like, Threat basically said that they were trying to find someone that didn't clash with their star players, and for that, S tag's perfect. So yeah, should be back to support, which is honestly really nice because I always find it sad seeing S tag for the longest time be this Swiss Army knife, and having to play all these random roles when it's so clear to me he's just a good support player. Just put him as a support player, and he's just good. So
really
I'm
don't
really hoping it
understand
works for him.
how they didn't see that in NiP when they had him, and they were
Yeah.
switching that AWP around. I don't understand it. Like, he didn't perform well in the AWP, fair enough, but you know this guy can do it in the support role, so why not just give him that? And the cut should have been made back then. It's just a mess. Just
Wait,
waited
what
far
if they
too
bring
long
back
for them to fix it.
ZTR?
Wow. I don't even. What's CTR even up to
Where is he?
these
Is he on
days?
Godsend?
Godsend.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, he's benched. Benched on Godsend.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting flashbacks now to the era where they were just like having LNC in the squad, and then ZTR would be in the team for a tournament. Fairly sure they
I
won.
think
the
actually
Roobet
thinking
last
more
year
about
with
it now, I think it has to be ZTR or Glaive. It has to be those two.
Was Glaive not linked with, or not linked, but Heroic? Maybe he could be going there.
I think I did see something with that. But then, like, sometimes you always need to check who's doing these, because, like,
yeah,
low key, I could just randomly make that up because it sounds like that could be pretty legit.
Yeah.
Oh mate, all the insider Twitter accounts are just such horseshit. Like, stop. if you're on Twitter and you're calling yourself an insider account, just stop. Like, you don't know anything. Like, it's so funny. There's this guy, I think he's called like I can't actually remember what he's called.
Are we talking
But
about
he was
Harumi?
Harumi is
Oh,
the
maybe.
one,
He was
the
getting
one I'm
roasted
thinking
by
of.
Maui. I felt actually
Yeah,
so bad for
Harumi.
him.
Yeah.
I felt so bad for him.
Well, Harumi has said the test roster for NiP includes Maxter. I don't even know if I know Maxter.
I did
to be
see that
honest.
as well, but I don't think
He was from Young Ninjas.
I think he's the last remaining player on it, right?
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. They haven't got anyone. So
yeah.
I guess that's for a while they don't have anyone. Yeah.
But he's not an IGL, from what I'm aware.
Yeah, maybe that's like their. Actually, I don't even know. Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
It would have made sense had S-Tag IGL'd. This is what I was trying to speculate this. Like, I got the news for the S-Tag signing as I was taking off. So I was trying to quickly figure out, like, who are these players that could possibly be in. And I looked up Maxter and I was like, well, that makes sense if S-Tag's IGLing, but now this news has come out. Doesn't really do it. So I think the Glaive one could be a decent shout.
Yeah, you just don't have many options, so you might have to take a risk like that. I'm also just looking through Harumi, and he's like, oh, Cadian's one step away from signing a contract with Liquid. That was like a week ago.
I'm one step away from
one
signing
step
for
taking
Spirit.
a while.
Yeah, like, this is the thing that pisses me off with insider accounts. It's like I could literally say I'm one step away from signing with Astralis, and the one step is them offering me the contract. Like, it's a joke. Like, you don't know anything.
I do wonder if they have like multiple different accounts and they just tweet out different stuff on different accounts, and then whichever one ends up being a bit more accurate, they're like, I know everything, guys.
Can you see the edits that people make with Twitter Blue?
I think so, and you can only edit.
You can view edited tweets, yeah.
So. Okay, I was gonna say maybe you just do it. I know you can see that's been edited, but you could just like change it to make it right every time.
No, you can see the edited post, like you can see what it was before.
Oh, okay.
That'd be so funny though.
Yeah.
Imagine if the edit reset every hour, and then at 59 minutes you just change it to a new player, and you just keep it going, and there's just big just one thread.
I did see that guy as well. He's like, he'd put out the move, and it would be like half hour before it actually got announced properly.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how much of a leak is it become now? It's like, maybe it's just because I was reading it on HLTV like half hour later, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, also low key, like I know with the simple one as well, like obviously being at Sydney, we knew that he hadn't flown there already. So like pretty much anyone at Sydney kind of knew that by the time he tweeted it. So yeah, who knows?
Yeah, I did see lots of speculation coming out like when that happened. Wasn't it just in the end because if he'd left the country, might not be able to return?
Well, there's that's I think maybe the official story. There's conflicting stories.
Oh,
is that him
I don't know. That basically, no, there's not conflicting stories. It's more that
Pinnacle Stack Ep06
just some people I mean, listen, this is people have speculated about this. Some people just think that he didn't want to come and play the CS2 tournament because he's been talking that shit about the game.
I saw that 3 months tweet that someone quoted when he wasn't attending, and it was like, yeah, he's done it right. he's actually committed to it, the madman. Which would be funny if that was the case, that he's like so committed to not playing the first 3 months because the game is just not in a state that he's happy to play on.
He had to be baiting on stream as well. You know, when he was saying, "Oh yeah, I spoke to Valve and I just told him to like F off." It's like he had to be baiting. Like, there's no way he actually did that. Because if he did,
oh no, you don't know simple, my friend. That is the most simple thing ever.
There's no way, surely that has to be troll,
dude. In his head, he's like, "Oh, it's just so obvious what's wrong with the game. Why should I need to tell them? They're just ruined." Which is really dumb, but I think that's what he thinks.
Imagine they just ban him from tournaments because he's just so disrespectful to them. That would be a way to go. Anyway, there's only like one more team I kind of want to discuss, and we've talked about them a fair bit. My light and my camera have gone all weird. We should talk about Astralis briefly. We've done Heroic, Liquid, and NiP. So Falcons is really the only other one. We said that Nico and Monazi are two people that are linked. Snappy, Magisk, and then they're looking to keep Boros. Is that the best team we think they could get? With, you know, we spoke about it last time with NATO about if they have the unlimited funding, they've got the appeal of Zonic, who could they get? Is that the team that you think, or are there any players that you think could be replaced?
Can you say the rumored roster again?
So it was Nico, Monazi, Snappy, Magisk, and then they're keeping Boros.
It's pretty great, really.
Yeah,
I was saying when this was first announced, if Zonic wants to build like an actual top 1 team, they basically can't keep anyone on the current roster except maybe Boros, just because of the potential. And then, like, I actually think MHL is pretty decent, but it's like, why would you risk that when you can just get a top player? Yeah, that sounds pretty great on paper. I love Magisk. Magisk is so good as an anchor. I think he's the sort of player that if you get on a team like this, it really gets you excited. I'm actually surprised then that, like, Nico might go without Hunter. I thought that might just be a package deal from now on, because I still think Hunter's pretty damn solid, but, you know, fair play. If you get presented with this lineup and you're Nico, I guess you sit there and say, this could actually dominate. So yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah, I think it seems like a very solid roster, doesn't it? And it's just,
I like it. It makes a lot of sense. I think Zonic, you can always trust to make a team that looks really good on paper. A lot of people are very high on Boros. I'm still not 100% sure, just because you see these players come in and do really well and then maybe struggle a bit. But from what I've seen, he's kind of the one player on Falcons who has been doing pretty damn well recently. So listen, I don't hate keeping him for a bit. And worst case scenario, you have enough time. If after a few months you don't think Boros is it, you kind of have a bit of time before the first CS2 major. So you could always make one more move a few months from now. So yeah, no complaints on my front. And it's almost like boringly expected to me that that they would make a roster this good. I also will say, when this was first announced, I said on Twitter, I was like, I don't think Simple or Zywoo will go to Falcons. I think Simple just loves Na'Vi too much. Apparently also hates the game. Zywoo especially, he seems so embedded into Vitality. I could imagine him being there for a long, long time. Simple was maybe slightly more likely, but yeah, I kind of thought, like, if you want a superstar, maybe it's like Nico's your best chance, and seems like that's the way they're going. So,
Brandon, I imagine you've seen a fair bit of Boros as well from like maybe CCT and other events that you've casted. So just be good to get your take on him as well.
I think he's a good player with a lot of potential. I just think it needs the right environment. And to be honest with you, when you're presented with that environment, it'd be difficult for him to not reach his full potential. And if he doesn't reach his full potential and he doesn't live up to the hype, then I imagine he could easily get cut and replaced by anyone else in the world. So I think it's a good choice that they are keeping him. I like the fact that they're not completely gutting the 5-man roster. I mean, making 4 cuts is pretty harsh, but yeah, I think he's a good pickup. I think that It's good that he remains in the team. And if this is true and this is a roster that gets created, it'll be very exciting to see how far he can actually go with the right leadership, with the right guidance, with the right coaching, and obviously with the teammates around him to set him up.
Yeah, it's worth a try, but I do like low-key, my gut would tell me, especially for a team like this with Zonic coaching, I actually don't think his decision making's good at all. Like I remember SDY even was coming out and saying after they didn't have Boros anymore, he was saying, "Oh, it's nice that we can play a bit more structured now because we don't just have basically Boros would just kind of run at people." So like, yeah, he's got really good mechanics, but that's the one question. And like you said, I think it's just really nice he's going to have this opportunity because if he can improve in that aspect, this is the perfect place to do it. Basically,
Yeah,
I think if he
exactly.
can make it, he will make it on this team.
Do you think that Snappy can utilize Boris quite well though?
I think so. I think he's a better Madden. So like,
yeah,
I reckon he can. Yeah.
And I think I mean, if you get hold of Monazy as well, one of the greatest prospects that we've got at the minute. Yeah, they kind
that's the best signing you can make in Counter-Strike right now. For me, like just long term, it just guarantees your team's going to be good, doesn't it?
But imagine if Boris doesn't work out and they get Donk.
I knew you. I was just about to ask you that. I was just waiting, so I didn't cut off the lag.
Did Donk just drop a sub 1 rating against VP? Just can't do it against the big teams.
Let's bring it up because he's in my fantasy team, Hawker. La la la. Oh, I'm so cool. This is his one bad game in like 40,000 matches. Be quiet.
I bet you would love to see Donk on this team. But just everything that you've said since episode 1 it'd be done. Like you would be the smartest man on the planet. And this team goes on to win a major with Donk there. He lifts the trophy with his MVP performance.
Yeah, I can't wait to get a restraining order from Spirit after they watch the podcast. So,
was it Dinko that made it really awkward?
Yes.
For that one episode, yeah.
Yeah, thank God he's not coming back.
We'll see when we hit season 2.
I'm joking,
start
Dinko, I love you.
Recurring guests. See what we get going on. But yeah, I think that's all for the roster changes. I don't know if there's anything else you guys want to discuss. It's been a kind of different one. Not discussed too much on tournaments. More about the changes. It's quite dead in the calendar at the minute. I think for the most part, it's primarily because CS2 is just released and tournament organizers aren't exactly ready to be putting these tournaments on, so they're postponing. But yeah, if there's anything else you guys want to talk about.
I mean, I will quickly bring up a maybe slightly broader topic. We don't have to talk too long, but the thing that does frustrate me is the end of the season shouldn't feel dead like this. It's just because of Blast's formats, where like, so Blast has their Copenhagen event, for example. That should genuinely be, outside of Cologne and Katowice, an event every year that's really, really hyped. That should be like a prestige event. But it doesn't feel like that because of the way the Blast calendar works, and it's just the full finals, and it's not even the proper like finals. So I almost just kind of wish that Blast kind of just went away from this whole circuit. Like I get why they do it, and it helps the partner teams, blah blah. But for an actual spectacle, for an actual event that, as Maui would say, has cultural impact, you want to build up your Copenhagen event so that it gets to that reputation of a Cologne and Katowice, because those events have been around for so long that they have that prestige event and they're almost on the level of majors for a lot of players. Whereas Copenhagen, it's like you don't even know if you don't even know what teams are going to be there. You can't just invite all the top teams. So if they ran that Copenhagen event as a separate event, I think it would genuinely be another elite event that everyone really cared about. It would very quickly become that. It's just a shame that it's that the whole system makes it a bit awkward and like not as hype, sadly.
I think it'd be bigger if it was the World Final.
Also true, yeah. Also true.
Is that happening this year?
Yes, it's in
December. In Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, December 13th is the current dates. Their last team will be decided next month at the full final. So yeah,
Nice.
how does that work again? Because isn't there if a team that's already qualified wins, does it just get passed down to the
I think it works on points. I feel like
second
they get like a set amount of points, and then if
you're
someone
correct.
who's won is already qualified, then it will go to the next team that isn't qualified that has the highest points based on some placements, I'd imagine, in high profile marquee tournaments and also in the Blast circuit, if I had to guess.
Yeah, that does ring a bell from last year. Because I remember when Outsiders qualified because they won the major. So I'm
Yeah,
not sure
yeah,
if they're
yeah.
doing
That
the
sounds right.
yeah, no, yeah, it definitely does sound right.
I mean, the other problem, I guess, with their system, like actually right now, their world final has a lot of the really high ranked teams, but it also has Heroic, who, like, I don't know what lineup they're going to have at that event. And they've obviously qualified off of good performances, but yeah, it can get a bit awkward if you qualify right at the start of the season and then bring an entirely different lineup to the world final.
Yeah,
Didn't they
maybe
win the world
Glaive will
final
be
last year?
there.
I think they did. Yeah, true. Who the hell knows?
Honestly, the teams in the full final, if Heroic had their lineup still, this does look like a really solid event in terms of
It
teams.
does. It does.
It is a shame about Heroic, and I guess it's really just Heroic because FaZe is all
I
Rumours
mean,
still.
I'd switch NIP out, but other than that,
I would
pretty
also
good.
switch NIP out, but yeah, I'd maybe put Ents in there instead, and we're actually at a competitive event. Unfortunately,
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. So
yeah, it's just a shame because like Ents are already qualified, so I guess they're just not at this event. Like so it's a
so
shame.
I'm
It's a
looking at
shame,
it.
man. Like seriously.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now, and it's like, so there's three rankings based on Blast. I think normally it's two, but there's only one major this year. And then it's the major winner, the two winners of Pro League, and then the Blast Fall and the Blast Spring final. So Heroic won Blast
Yeah.
Spring, which is why they're there. Blast Fall has got some other teams. Wait, looking at it then, it'd probably be like, so you're looking realistically teams that go from full final to world final that haven't already qualified would be Complexity, Astralis, Cloud9, NiP. What? How have NiP in here?
well, I'm trying to figure out because I know that we 2-0'd Vitality when Hampus came back to win or become first or third.
Yes,
It's
yeah,
done
I
like
see
that,
that.
which
I
is
see
Yeah,
that
it's
now.
the
That
really
full,
was
yeah.
annoying. I'll hold
19th
on
of
to that
July.
win until the end of the year and until
Yeah.
Blast is over. But yeah, it does really annoy me as well, the events that it's first to third, because especially where I have to like write an article on these things and I'm trying to discuss them in terms of how well the team done it. So, well, no one technically won the event, which
Yeah.
puts a bit of a downer
I
on
mean,
it.
dude, even this full final, like, okay, yes, you can win the event, but then it basically feels like the prize is. I mean, you get decent prize money, but because it's a qualifier for the world final, it's just never gonna have that like epic feeling in the same way. Like teams aren't gonna be as like, oh yeah, let's do it. Which kind of sucks, but hey, that's my one gripe. I'm just sad because I think the Danish event could be like so incredible. It could be an event that everyone looks forward to every year, and instead you're just like, oh, it's just another one of the Blast tournaments.
Do you reckon if they renamed it, it would feel different? Like, you know, like ESL have like obviously got the Pro Tour. If Blast renames their events and they were like, okay, it's all in
This is Blast
anticipation
Copenhagen
leading
or
for this
whatever.
world final, but this is like, yeah, Blast Copenhagen 23. Like, even if it was that placebo of a name change and maybe the format was slightly different. Like, I don't know. I don't mind watching the full final and the spring final. I just think the groups bore me to death because
The
it
groups,
doesn't really feel like you're watching anything and none of it matters because if you can qualify by finishing third, what's the point?
Yeah, isn't the thing with the groups as well? It's like if you come dead, I don't know if it's dead last or I'm trying to word this in a way that makes sense to their first or third structure. But let's just say like 1, 2, 3, 4 is their way because there's 3 teams per column. I think if it's the third or the fourth one where you go to the showdown anyway. I might be wrong
it's
in
something
that.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like every event is a qualifier. I feel like even if they did it in a way where it was if we're saying a season is half a year, that if they did it per season, with the world final being, before the summer player break, and then they did the same thing again, where the world final was before the winter player break, then it'd probably be a bit more, as you say, like, have a bit more cultural impact on it. You could have Copenhagen world final summer, and then you could have whatever one at the end of the year as that world final. Because I always feel like
true.
they do full finals in Copenhagen anyway. There's always like the spring one is always in a different place. They did it was it in Dallas, or was it just in the US? Maybe it was Washington. I think it was Washington.
I think it was
DC.
Washington.
Or was that
Washington.
Showdown? I don't know.
But then the next one is in London.
One of them.
So it's like you're changing the spring one every time. But I always seem to remember it being in Copenhagen for the full one. So you're probably right. They could just rename it to Blast Copenhagen.
I actually think the way to do it would be you have the like the groups at the start of the whatever. I think the start of the season, I actually think they're okay, mainly just because it low-key feels like a warm-up event, and you kind of need that, honestly, because
at the start of the year,
get up to speed.
Didn't Liquid come in picking Nuke? I'm trying to remember.
There's all sorts
they
of
came
weird
in
stuff
picking
that
Nuke,
happens,
which they hadn't picked once, just because they were like, it doesn't really matter where we place in this event.
Yeah, I prefer you do like the groups, and then I feel like they could run like 2 world finals every year, and that would be fine.
Yeah.
And you just have one of them in Copenhagen, because I get, you probably have to have one in Abu Dhabi for whatever reasons. So yeah, but anyway, all of this sadly is probably moot because I don't know if these changes will happen. But yeah, it just sucks. It just sucks.
Definitely possibility though with the partner team structure getting eliminated over the next few years. Can't remember the exact
true
time when that's meant to happen, but yeah, I completely agree though. If you were to do like 2 world finals a year, it feels a lot better because even the first one, like the spring final, you play so much of so many of these events over the course of the year for absolutely nothing for the most part until the world final at the very end of the year. And you always get the major before that anyway, which is just so much more exciting than a world final. So yeah, it's good. I think this is a really good point to bring up though, Hawker. I definitely could be a lot more interesting. I think many people will see this Copenhagen event in the calendar and be like, yeah, I prefer to watch an ESL event though.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame.
Yeah,
I think it deserves the prestige that it's sadly not going to get.
It's got the teams though.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that is going to be everything for the podcast. I don't know if there's anything else that anyone else wants to talk about. No, all good. It's getting late here as well. I don't know what the time is for Alex, but we're recording this obviously because Alex is in New Zealand and the time difference it's about 11 p.m. here, so getting late.
Yeah, it's 11 a.m. here. It's literally 12 hours difference, which is easy to convert.
So if any of our points throughout this episode have been a little bit, thrown off course or don't really make too much sense, myself and Brandon are tired, Walker's tired, so yeah, you have to bear with us for that. But hopefully back to normal schedule for episode 7, which will be coming.
We'll cut it all out anyway, so you'll never see any of it.
You won't see our tired eyes. Yeah, coming just before the Blast Full final, so we can discuss that then with a guest and we'll get their take on it. I think that's a good point we can bring up then as well, Hawker. But yeah, that is that for Pinnacle Stack episode 6. So we're over halfway through our episodes now until the end of the year of what we're calling season 1, I guess. And yeah, we're going to continue getting some guests on from this point forward. We'll be covering a lot of the other events that are happening throughout the year. Some might get announced as we go up. I know some have been postponed because of CS2. So yeah, just have to bear with us on what we cover. Yeah, as always, thank you for watching. Check out these guys down in the description. And we'd love to hear any comments you guys have for guest suggestions and just anything else you'd like to hear us talk about on the podcast. Yeah, thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.